20 days into the war in Ukraine, and we begin tonight with what could be the most dangerous next 35 hours for Ukraine's capital city of Kyiv. There is a curfew in place as we speak. People cannot leave their homes unless they are going to a bomb shelter. The city's mayor warns this is a difficult moment in the nearly 3-week-long war. Kyiv is nearly surrounded at this point. Russian airstrikes are getting stronger. But Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy is not fazed, inviting the prime ministers of Poland, Slovenia, and the Czech Republic into Kyiv, arguably the most volatile part of the country. We have some video now of that meeting, a show of solidarity from Eastern European leaders risking their lives to ride into a war zone. And just hours from now, President Zelenskyy will address members of the U.S. Congress in one of the biggest speeches he has given so far. Correspondents Kelly Meyer and Robert Sherman are standing by tonight. We begin with Kelly live outside the White House with the latest. Kelly.
Good evening, Marnie. Well, for a foreign leader to come and address members of Congress, both houses of Congress, virtually tomorrow during a war, while his own life is being targeted, this is all just unheard of. He'll likely be addressing members of Congress from an undisclosed location as he calls for more help from the U.S. And this comes as we're learning that President Biden will be heading to Europe as a war is raging there in Eastern Europe. In Ukraine, of course, he will be heading over there to meet with NATO allies to reassure their unification basically against Russian President Vladimir Putin and show that they are not intimidated by him and that he should be afraid of NATO.
President Joe Biden heading to Brussels, meeting with NATO allies for an emergency summit as the war rages on in Ukraine.
His goal is to meet in person, face to face with his European counterparts and talk about and assess where we are at this point in the conflict.
The White House announcing the president's plans today, his first trip back to Europe since his meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin this summer. NATO leaders expected to discuss reassuring support for Ukraine and strengthening their own defenses. Today, Russia hitting back at Biden, slapping sanctions on the president and those around him.
I would first note that President Biden is a junior, so they may have sanctioned his dad. May he rest in peace. The second piece I would say is that won't surprise any of you that none of us are planning tourist trips to Russia. None of us have bank accounts that we won't be able to access, so we will forge ahead.
The U.S. weighing more sanctions, but the effort has yet to stop Moscow. At a critical moment in the war, Ukraine's president is reaching out directly to members of Congress, addressing them virtually on Capitol Hill tomorrow, calling for more support from the U.S.
Congress has been forward-leaning on many of the elements of providing Ukraine with defensive equipment, and I am sure he will call upon Congress to continue to do that. To give him some type of air defense systems, which I think we should.
Bipartisan calls growing for more weapons and air support to Ukraine. The Biden administration wary of escalating the conflict. Today, the president promising help is on the way, signing a sweeping government funding bill, including $13.6 billion in security and humanitarian assistance for Ukraine.
We're moving urgently to further augment the support to the brave people of Ukraine as they defend their country.
And Marty, I'm told tonight that we will hear from President Biden tomorrow officially announcing that support, that military assistance for Ukraine. We're not sure exactly the timing of that. White House officials telling me this just moments ago, but it will be an interesting split screen moment if it happens in the morning around the time of the Ukrainian president's address, or just both of these big addresses happening tomorrow when you hear from the Ukrainian president in the morning asking the U.S. for more support and the president later saying that they are going to be delivering that support.
And Kelly, of course, his address tomorrow in front of both houses of Congress comes after he has spoke to British Parliament, Canadian Parliament. Give us a clearer picture of what we expect Zelenskyy to say.
We expect him to ask for likely more weapons assistance. He's been calling as well for a no-fly zone over Ukraine. That's been something that's been a non-starter for the Biden administration. He's also been calling for fighter jets to be sent into Ukraine to help with their air support. Poland had suggested a plan to send those fighter jets, the MiG-29 fighter jets, to Ukraine, but that would have bypassed or gone to a U.S. airbase in Germany before then going on to Ukraine. And that was something that the Biden administration just couldn't get on board with. But now there are growing calls from Congress, bipartisan calls, to send those fighter jets in. So this is putting President Biden face to face with members of his own party, setting up a showdown. So it'll be interesting to see how lawmakers react tomorrow. We'll be listening for that, just how they take President Zelensky's message here and what comes from it.
Thanks for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.